The Alps were behind him. The great wall of ice and stone that Rome believed was its salvation had become his gateway. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general, was in Italy, and Rome, insulated by centuries of arrogance, was about to feel the cold touch of true fear. They had dismissed him as another barbarian chieftain, a nuisance from a distant, sun-scorched land. They had not understood. They thought the mountains would break him. Instead, he broke the mountains. Panic rippled through the Senate. Scouts returned with tales of an army that did not march, but flowed like a vengeful river, led by a man who seemed to command the very elements. They spoke of elephants, monstrous beasts from a land of myth, trampling through the snows of northern Italy. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a violation of the natural order. The Roman consuls Publius Cornelius, Scipio, and Tiberius Sempronius Longus were dispatched with legions of iron and confidence. They were Rome, the masters of the world. They would crush this African upstart. They met him at the river Trebia. It was a cold December morning. Hannibal's Numidian cavalry, the finest light horsemen in the world, baited the Romans. Sempronius, eager for glory, ordered his men to cross the freezing river, breakfastless and shivering. On the other side, Hannibal's army waited, fed and warm. It wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. The trap was sprung. Hidden Carthaginian infantry and cavalry emerged from the riverbanks, crashing into the Roman flanks and rear. The river ran red with Roman blood. The legions, the symbol of Roman invincibility, shattered. 30,000 Romans fell. Rome was horrified, but this was only the beginning. Spring arrived, and with it, Hannibal moved south. The new consul, Gaius Flaminius, a man of immense pride, pursued him, determined to avenge Trebia. Hannibal led him into another trap, this time along the misty shores of Lake Trasimene. He hid his entire army in the forested hills, overlooking a narrow path by the lake. As the long Roman column marched into the defile, the morning mist clinging to the water, the trap closed. From the front, the rear, and the flank, the Carthaginians descended like a storm. In the fog and confusion, Roman soldiers couldn't form lines, couldn't see the enemy. They only felt the sting of Carthaginian steel. In 3 hours, another consular army was annihilated. 15,000 Romans were killed, including the consul himself. Thousands more were captured. Rome was now naked. The road to the city itself lay open. The Republic was on its knees. They appointed a dictator, Quintus Fabius Maximus, who understood he could not beat Hannibal in open battle. He shadowed him, harassing his supply lines, refusing to engage. Rome mocked him, calling him Conctator the Delayer. They craved a glorious victory, a return to the old ways where Roman might was absolute. They grew impatient with Fabius's wisdom. They wanted blood. They would get it their own. After Fabius's term ended, Rome assembled the largest army it had ever put in the field. 8 legions, nearly 80,000 men, under 2 new consuls, Varro and Paulus. They were determined to find Hannibal and crush him with sheer numbers. They found him near a small village in southern Italy named Cannae. The ground was flat, open, perfect for the Roman legions to apply their overwhelming force. It was exactly what Hannibal wanted. He was outnumbered almost 2 to 1. But numbers are a crude measure of strength. Hannibal possessed something Rome could not comprehend, a transcendent tactical genius. He arranged his army in a formation that baffled the Romans. A thin crescent-shaped line of his Gallic and Spanish infantry bulged outward toward the Roman center. His veteran African infantry, his best troops, he held back, hidden on the flanks. The Romans charged, as they always did. Their massive center smashed into Hannibal's thin line. As planned, the Carthaginian center slowly gave way, bending backward. The crescent inverted. The Romans, sensing victory, pushed deeper and deeper into the bulge, their formation becoming a dense, compressed mob. They were walking into the jaws of death. Then, Hannibal gave the signal. His elite African infantry, who had been held in reserve on the wings, wheeled inward, smashing into the exposed Roman flanks. At the same time, his cavalry, having already routed their Roman counterparts, swept around and attacked the legionaries from the rear. The trap was complete. The massive Roman army was surrounded on all sides. The double envelopment, a maneuver so perfectly executed, it has been studied by generals for 2,000 years. What happened next was not a battle. It was the systematic extermination of an army. There was no room to fight, no room to run. The Roman soldiers, packed shoulder to shoulder, could barely lift their arms. They could only stand and die as the Carthaginians, disciplined and relentless, cut them down rank by rank. For 8 hours, the killing continued under the brutal August sun. By sunset, the field of Cannae was a sea of crimson and shattered iron. Up to 70,000 Romans lay dead. One of the consuls, senators, commanders, and tens of thousands of the best soldiers of the Republic were gone. It remains, to this day, the single most successful act of annihilation in military history, the greatest tactical victory ever achieved. Rome fell into a collective state of shock and terror. The city's gates were barred. Women wailed in the streets. The Senate debated abandoning Italy altogether. Hannibal had done the impossible. He had broken the spirit of Rome. This wasn't just strategy, it was a form of spiritual warfare. He proved that an African mind, a Carthaginian mind, could not only match but utterly eclipse the vaunted military machine of Europe. And for this, they could never forgive him. Rome eventually recovered, not through tactical brilliance, but through attrition, resources, and the tragic abandonment of Hannibal by his own government in Carthage. They denied him the reinforcements he needed to take the city of Rome itself. And so began the Second War, the war on his memory. Roman historians, the creators of the narrative we have inherited, went to work. They couldn't deny his victories. They were too catastrophic to hide so. They twisted the story. They painted him as a cruel, faithless barbarian, a monster. They minimized his genius, attributing his success to trickery and luck. They sought to erase the fact that it was an African man who had brought their empire to the brink of utter collapse. They tried to bury the truth under 2,000 years of their own propaganda, but they failed, because the spirit of Hannibal could not be contained by biased histories. He became a symbol, a whispered legend of resistance. His strategies inspired leaders across generations, from African kings fighting colonial powers to modern generals studying the art of war. His shadow loomed large. He proved that the mind is the ultimate weapon, and that the will of a single, determined individual can challenge the mightiest of empires. He was a genius abandoned by his own, a victor who ultimately lost the war, a tragedy of epic proportions. Yet, his legacy endured, a quiet testament to a truth Rome tried to silence. Empires fall, names fade, but the truth survives. Hannibal Barca, the African general who humbled Rome, still marches through the memory of those who refuse to forget. If you believe in reclaiming our history, comment "We remember" below. Like and subscribe for more untold stories.